Hello, my name is Mark, and today we're going to make a little painting. It is going to be based on the screen in the upper left-hand corner there, and we're going to get right started, dive right in. I'm using Krita. I have also already laid out a color palette, which is going to be off to the side here, a little bit out of your view, but I'll move it in once we're painting. And on this side, I will have a series of brushes that are mostly from the oil painting kit that's directly installed in base Krita, as well as the RBGA brushes directly from Krita, and the Memaleo brushes for a more impasto style as we go along. And we're going to dive right in. I'm going to go back down to Krita here and define the new layer. And that layer I'm just going to call my sky. I'm going to put in a very, very light sky. So I'm going to start with using a very light brush for this. I'm probably going to use this guy here, which is just a very textured, smooth brush. I'm going to choose a reasonably large brush size for this, and I'm basically going to make a V pattern. So I'll draw it out for you using the pen and Midnight Black, just so you can see the line more clearly. And I'm going to also redefine this layer here as our sketch layer. And I'm basically just going to sketch in, I also have the image on that time, so you may see me look in that direction too, a V pattern here. So we have from roughly here or so to roughly here or so. This particular image is from a hiking trip I went on recently to New Hampshire. We have a large tree that's going to kind of bisect here of Crawford Notch. I'm going to switch back to our sky layer, and my general idea is to fill in this V section here with a much more lighter tone. So let me get started with that. The colors on the side here are all the same colors that Bob Ross used. I simply have asked Gemini to create me 6 shades of each. So titanium white, midnight black, alizarin crimson, bright red, sap green, and all his other favorites. And they're all going to be on the side here. If any of you are interested, I do have a Google sheet that contains all these. I'm happy to share it. And these are this is the general color palette that I'll be using to create this image. So diving in, I'll move this right back over so you guys can see a little bit more centered. And I will also move the image over a little bit as well to give you a little more space. Cool. So diving in, I'm going to take Phthalo Blue. Again, I'm going to use this brush here. And I'm just going to take a very large brush and begin to make little X patterns in this. And I'm going to really move very quickly with the brush, as fast as my GPU will allow me, basically. And I'm going to just basically color this in. I may also switch back and forth between a few different colors here. Well, basically what I'm going to do is blend on the canvas rather than blending on the palette like Bob would. Blending on canvas is a very easy way to really quickly establish vibrant colors by blending rather than by mixing the paint or using the color wheel we have at the top here. My own personal preference is to use a defined palette and to work off that defined palette as we go along. As I get closer to the side here, I may also mix in other shades of phthalo blue. Again, trying to be mindful of the source image that we're looking at and trying to also achieve that very bright color. And I will again blend this very, very, very thoroughly using some of the other Memaleo brushes in a moment. And all I'm really trying to do is establish some base color as I go along and move my tablet so it's more stable. Again, I'm just adding in color and adding in some general block shapes here. I'm not even really focused on the color itself because I'm going to blend this all out in a moment. And all I'm trying to do is establish some character and establish some basic size. Now, the brush I'm choosing here is the Memaleo um, Flow Blender knife, and this will add a good deal of texture. I'm going to make this a bit bigger so you can see it more clearly as I paint, but this will add texture to the paint as I blend it through. And again, I'm trying to create that really bright effect that we see in the image. As I'm painting this, you're going to see ripples appear, and it's going to actually look and have texture to it, which is really why I love these brushes, because I can really feel the paint move as I'm going along. And again, all I'm really doing is trying to spread out the paint so that it creates a more even, uniform color, so that it really gets that very bright, vibrant, and very oversaturated corner of the image there, which is in the photograph that I took. This image is on Crawford Path. Crawford Path is the oldest hiking trail in the United States. It was done on a hiking trip where I hiked from up Crawford Path to Mount Pierce and over to Mount Eisenhower. Ended up being about a 7-mile hike with quite a lot of elevation. And as I was going, I was stopping to take wonderful photos like this. This particular one is fairly early on in the hike where I had just began to gain elevation, turned around and saw my progress and kind of wanted to capture that emotion and that feel. So one of the things that I really want to capture in this painting is the feeling that I had as I kind of reflected on how far I'd come, even though it was only a very early part of the journey. And that is why a lot of my strokes here are remaining rather vertical, because I really want to capture that vertical feel. And that's one of the things why I like the Memaleo brush as well, because they have that added texture. And that added texture can also can also add to that element of verticality that I'm going to try to capture in this painting. Hopefully. We'll see. And again, all I'm really doing is trying to blend this out. My first pass here is going to be with a larger brush size, and that larger brush size will really capture a lot more of texture. And notice how, as I blend it out, this white color, it's also really begun to become much brighter and blend on the canvas as I described. And as I blend this out, it'll kind of have that much brighter feel that we see in the image. We're going to contrast that with some of the other colors you see here on the palette, which will then help us to really have a more vibrant image at the end. And again, the software I'm using is Krita. Krita is 100% free, and it has an amazing brush engine, and it has an amazing open source mindset, so that it encourages both artists and creators to do things as they see fit. So a lot of the particular creators share a lot of what they do and share the way they do it, and that is another thing that attracted me to Krita over other platforms. I had used Sketchbook in the past, and that's kind of how I learned digital art. But Krita has really blown it away in terms of, well, number one, Sketchbook's not really being maintained anymore. And number two, it was owned by Autodesk, whereas this is open source for the last, so I'm not relying on one particular company to maintain it. The community will do so, and it's community driven, so a lot of the corporatization of it is not there, and it really is a platform that is built and made for artists. So now, as you can see, I'm beginning to get the color that I want here, and I'm beginning to get the very vertical elements that I wanted. Now, one thing I'm going to try to do here, I'm actually going to switch brushes here real fast, and I'm going to change back over to, actually, we'll give this brush a try. It's actually the first time I've used this one in a while. This is basically a splotchy brush, so again, I've increased the size, and now what I'm going to just try to do is just use phthalo titanium white along that V where we had the V before. And I'm going to try to add white elements along there. And I'm going to try to really kind of bring out that brightness in the original image. And maybe I'll add some more blue as well. And really trying to, again, the beauty of this is that it's adding, every time I make a brush stroke, it is adding more and more texture onto the image. And really, you can even really see how the paint is moving and blending as I sketch and as I move. In fact, let me zoom in so you can really see it instead of giving you that really far out view. As I'm zoomed in here, you can really see the effect it's taking as I kind of just move the brush and now in a more circular manner. And you can see it blending even though I'm actually only applying paint rather than blending paint right now. And you can see it getting thicker as well. Now back to our blender brush, and again, just moving in circular motions. Trying to be mindful of the direction of the circle that I'm moving in. And again, I'm just trying to blend this out and have it a nice light feel to it while still maintaining that vertical feel that we're looking for. The undercolor here is a shade of burnt umber, and that is going to also add in more richness into our base color as we go through. And again, all I'm doing is moving that in circular motion. You can see as I get to the edge here how it's blending in, and we're getting a beautiful little purple color as the blues and reds mix together. I guess actually oranges mixed together. And all I'm doing is just going through and lightly touching the canvas with my pen. This is also my first video that I'm making on YouTube, so please drop me a like and a follow if you enjoyed this. It will be a long one because I really want to give you the entire painting process with no fast forwarding and no skipping around. And I really want to show you the entire process that I'm going through, which might lead to me rambling a little bit, but hopefully that'll also help you to get to know me a little. And again, all I'm really doing is just blending away and blending away. If you are kind of new to digital art or new to art in general and you kind of want one skill to focus on and learn, I really recommend focusing on blending. It will really help you to make things detailed. And the beauty of it is, this is really kind of the methodology that Bob Ross had, was by using his wet canvas and using that technique, he was able to blend directly on canvas and to essentially trick your eye. The beauty of art is that when you are painting, or even viewing a painting, it's very, very easy to let the eye do the work. And that is the mentality that I try to have as I paint, because it really will help to reduce the workload on the artist so that you as the viewer are seeing it as you see fit. So now, looking at what I painted so far, it's very easy to kind of interpret this as vertical clouds, right? Because that's kind of what I was going for. But you as the viewer may kind of have it interpret a little bit differently. Like you looking at it as is right now might see this as some kind of far off vista. And really, I've only been painting here for a couple of minutes. You can already see that, but just by mixing a few colors together, we've gotten an amount of lovely detail in there and a lot of rich texture just by kind of taking a couple different approaches in terms of how we varied brush stroke, brush type, as well as um, paint and color, and really blending together things that are in similar hues, so that we can then have that kind of balance. So and like having and staying in this first column of paint has really helped to make this more, will help set it back in the painting, so that as I add in other elements, this will be pushed back because it'll be the lightest part of the image. And so let me scroll down a bit here so we can work on this lower edge some more. And again, all I'm really doing is pushing this further and further down without adding any more paint, because that will really help to blend this with the rest of the painting and create a nice rich area for us to work upon, and also create the effect of background and distance without having to really think too much about painting in detail. Because the sad thing is, we're going to paint over most of this, right? And even though this is very rich in detail and I'm really liking it, it's going to have a lot of paint put on top of it. I'm using paint in quotation marks there. This is really only our first layer. One thing I'm going to try to do is paint with minimal layers and to stick to the colors that I have available on my palette. Now, my color palette is 84 colors. But the ability of Krita and the ability of really this kind of wet painting style is that those 88 colors will be combined into millions of combinations on the actual canvas itself. So that I'm starting with a very even 88 colors or 84 colors is really quite varied. It's basically 14 by 6. And those 14 by 6 colors will just be that foundation, and it really is going to be the basis of the hues and saturations that I use as I'm going through and filling in this canvas. Okay, so let me scroll back up to the top here as I begin to work through and fill in some more of the top of the painting. And again, I'm not adding on any fresh paint here, and I am still using that same brush I was using before of the Blender Flow Memileo brush, which basically mimics a palette knife. So if we were on a real canvas painting, I would basically just be scraping paint across and spreading it out more thinly, like imagining it as if you are using a butter knife to spread butter. That is the same effect that we're trying to have here, and I'm trying to blend with that background color to make that beautiful purple shade that I was talking about earlier. Now, as I go through this, I'm kind of focusing on what I like, and I'm not really trying to make an exact interpretation or an exact replica of the painting or the reference image I'm actually looking at on the screen there. All I'm trying to do is use that as a reference just for general shapes and forms. And what I'm really trying to capture is not the image. What I'm trying to capture instead is the emotion of that I felt as I came to this scene in the real world, in real life. And I really want again to have that kind of vertical focus to the image and that really vertical way of looking at it. And again, we've been kind of working on this now for maybe about 10, 20 minutes. I honestly don't even know because I'm not keeping track of time because this is my first video. But I'm really trying to fill the canvas and fill at least the top half of the canvas with, my mistake, I am not showing you what I'm painting because I'm under the reference image. And I'm trying to just kind of fill this in very nicely and to make this kind of nice purple shade, this nice purple hue as our background. Again, you can kind of see these great little ridges here that are forming based on where I'm placing the paint quote unquote, and where I'm spreading the paint to. Again, it's like spreading butter with a butter knife. I've only put so much paint or butter on the bread, and I'm trying to use this palette knife to really spread it out in a way that is going to really capture the image and really capture um, a very and capture the right saturation levels and capture brightness levels, so that this will basically form our base. And again, I'm just trying to get back to some more of those circular motions I used before. Really just trying to blend this together. But the other key about blending is to not overwork it, and to really let the paint do the work and let the eye do the work, and let the eye fill in the changes in color, so that it creates that viewer or that transition zone between the two. I am new to this. So again, all I'm kind of doing is just begin spreading it out. And then again, I'm not really caring about too much here because I know that I'm going to cover most of this, unfortunately. And we're going to have a lot more detailed forms put in as we go through here. And again, all I'm really trying to do is capture the actual feel rather than trying to do something or create something that is realistic, or that is an exact copy of the image. That's not really what I'm going for. Okay, what I'm really going for is how I feel and how it makes me feel. I'm going to change to some more vertical strokes here, just to change the directionality of it a little bit, and then kind of get back to a little bit of that verticality that we had at the beginning. I'm just going to, all I'm going to really do is just pull this down and work the paint down further. Just working it down, pulling it down. Okay, move down a little bit further, and then pull up a little bit further. And again, we've only really been working at this for 22 minutes now, and we're already beginning to see the general shape of the image, or at the very least, we're beginning to see the bright feel that the sky had, as we now have this kind of clear boundary between this very blue area and this much more gray area. And that's really what I want, because that's going to give me this impression that we have two distinct areas of the image, where one is very bright and light and the other is very dark and light, so that there are, right, it's very much in shadow, I should say. And those two things will very much play against each other and make it much clearer as to which parts of the painting are illuminated and then which parts are in that much more deep cast shadow. Now, again, all I'm doing is kind of taking that vertical element that we had and blending it back in with this kind of circular motion. Just nice, easy circles, really trying to make sure that, even if we look at, if I show the area that I was kind of working on here, the area here, I barely touched it, but your eye blends it in naturally, so it looks like this is so that it appears that more work has been done than it really has, and that is my goal. So that I want the viewer to have the impression that I worked this over for hours on end, when in reality I've only been painting this for 25 minutes. Right? And I really want to have that very mixed and varied feel, so that it does. Let me kind of just zoom out to see where we are in the painting as a whole in terms of composition. Good, very good. And again, vertical strokes to pull it down and to mix the paint with that more orange color of the burnt umber, pulling it down from a different spot to kind of have the paint feel, or the butter spread more lightly. Again, pulling it down and then back to the circular motions as I blend. And again, all I'm really doing here is just going through, and with circular motions, I am painting and blending the canvas. And just really trying to work it through and really trying to have this very light feel to it so it doesn't feel heavy. Especially as we move further from the area that's a true sky and move toward the areas that are going to be painted over. I really want those areas to feel much lighter and much more balanced before we begin to add depth to it. Okay, so again, all I'm doing is painting here, adding in some context and some detail. I'm really just kind of trying to, again, that's actually not true. I'm not trying to any context or any detail here. What I'm trying to do is give the illusion of that, right? And I want the viewer to have the illusion of detail, even though all I'm doing is blending out a few colors that I place on the canvas, right? Because again, all I'm trying to do is create a backdrop for the rest of the image, and to really have this very, we kind of zoom out, look at it more holistically again. Oops, that's the wrong window because I'm looking at you guys. And to really have this much more holistic image of it. And you can kind of really see how there is now really two very distinct areas, really three. We have this darker area here and the much brighter blue, rich blue area that's in this kind of V-shaped pattern here. And that kind of top 25% of the image, maybe a little more than that, is really where I want the eye to be drawn to. So even though a lot of this won't appear in the final image, I want it to have that brightness so that the viewer is drawn there, because that is where I want the eye to move to. And that's another critical thing when looking at painting, is you're going to really, as you are admiring or looking at a painting, or even looking at something in the natural world or the real world, your eye is not static. Your eye is moving around, and your eye will move from point to point, image to image, and it'll follow natural lines. So in the reference image, the verticality of the trees will pull your eye upwards into that V area, and that is the most important thing for me to capture as I'm working through and adding in the additional elements once we finish up this sky. And again, this is my first video. This is the first thing I'm going to publish with you guys. So if you do enjoy it, please like and please subscribe. As of right now, I have 0 subscribers. I have not posted anything, so every little bit of attention does help. Once finished, I will also make a print of this available online. So if any of you are interested in a copy of that print or would like to purchase only the one print of it, I'll be sharing that once the painting is finished. Again, going back to those more vertical strokes as I get closer and closer to filling the canvas with our sky. One reason why I'm filling the entire canvas is just so that there is that base layer of paint on it. And this will help us to have the illusion of a background, even in areas where it may not show through. So even though there is this very kind of green line in the background there, which is the Wiley range, that will likely be one of our brighter greens, and will likely be a very probably like sap green and titanium white, and will also be a very bright element that I'm going to place on top of this. But before I do that, I want to have something that I can mix it with, and that really is going to be this base layer that we're working on now. And the fact that we have different areas of tones already will help this to feel more vibrant as other colors get mixed on top. Um, and I really do want to have that kind of rich detail and that kind of variability as we go through the painting. And as we go through and make this much more um, detailed. Because again, as of right now, all we've really done is smack some blues on the canvas with some whites mixed in, and then mix them up, and then spread them out. That's really all we've done so far. And you know, even something as simple as that, where I probably have, maybe at this point maybe 5% of my strokes we're writing to paint to the canvas, and the remaining 95% have just been me mixing. Probably even less than that, right? Because I've just been kind of mixing this now for a solid 25 minutes of us painting, and it really is mostly just blending and mixing colors in and spreading color out. And then another mentality that Bob Ross had that I think is wonderful is the mentality of happy accidents. And in the digital world, it is very easy to get comfortable and get used to using the undo button. One goal of mine is to never use the undo button unless I truly didn't mean to do something. For example, let's say my finger, because I'm not wearing a glove, or my palm touched the canvas and caused a smear. That is when I would use the undo feature. But if I just make a stroke like this, where it goes like that, or it goes wild, I'll blend it. It's fine. And it's very important to not be married to any particular stroke or any particular part of the image, because things will get painted over, and in the end, I may be making the painting, but you guys are the ones who are viewing it. And the way that I painted, or the way that I intended to paint it, is not as important as the impression you get from the actual image itself. So now the sky is almost done. So I'm going to keep painting away here and keep painting away. And once I finish the sky, I'm going to create a new layer. And another thing that I'm trying to do is minimize the creation of layers, which will let more paint mix on the canvas. And once I create those additional layers, it also lets me pick and choose what I want to blend and then what I want to be static. In the natural world, in the real world, there is your eye will play tricks on you, and it will fill in details to the best of its ability. So when you look at something very far away, it'll appear very light in texture, and you won't see any detail until you're right up close to it. But your eye will play those kind of tricks. So if you look in the reference image, kind of in that kind of bright green area that's behind the trees that are in the midground and foreground, you can kind of almost you can tell that it's trees, right? But you can tell there's stuff there. But visually, if no one had ever told you what a tree was before, you wouldn't really have any idea about that. And that's kind of what I mean when I say that your eye fills in the gaps and it can play tricks. And as an artist, I want to take advantage of those little tricks. And I want to really kind of work through those and really play with it in terms of tricking your eye into seeing things that aren't really there. So let's go ahead and create that next layer. I'm going to simply double click on this bad boy, and we're going to call it widely range. It might not be the widely range. I'm also not sure if there are 1 or 2 L's in widely, and it might actually be just further trees that are further down the slope. But at this point, I think I had gained enough elevation to see the range behind me as I turned around to take this shot. And I want, let's see here. Let's use this guy. This is one of the RGBA brushes. It is the Impasto detail brush. We'll use this. We'll use this knife. This worked out well last time. It's because I want to use this because it's dad based. And again, I'm going to use a very large brush size, even bigger than before. And I'm going to start right about, so if you look at the image, it is kind of right just above the 60 or so percent mark. And it is, well, actually, we can go back to our sketch layer. I can put this on top, and I can lock it, well, unlock it rather. And I'm going to lock the level layers below it. I'm going to pick the pencil again. I'm going to go back to Midnight Black, and I'm going to pick something that is right about, so this is the V that we originally had. And I'm going to come a little below that, and I'm going to angle it kind of just like this. And now, when I go back to my widely ranged layer, I can lock the sketch layer, so that line will stay there. Now, what I'm going to do is just take this with that knife we were talking about, and I'm just going to splotch it in. Again, just splotching it in. And I'm not really trying to do much here because the layer below it is locked, and the paint below it will not move. And again, all I'm really trying to do is just create that kind of green feeling to it. And this is okay if it doesn't have a ton of details. Again, all I'm really trying to do, add some more. I will add some more darkness into it. Again, trying to follow that same V pattern that we had. And I'm just going to try to splotch in some more paint as I go through. And I'm also going to hit it with, I think, one of these is kind of wavy in color. Yeah, wavy ridges. And I'm just going to also kind of go through with this, back to that light color, and just kind of really apply some pressure as I paint it through. And again, I'm going to try to follow that line and really try to fill this in. And really try to create something a little more homogeneous here. Back to that, maybe this shade of green here. Again, trying to really darken this in. And by putting the darker colors toward the bottom, I am pushing that darker level, that lower level, closer to us. And that implies a slope, right? And that's really one of the things that I'm going for here as well. So now, back to our flow brush. And again, I'm just going to try to blend this a bit. And I'm just going to try to create this feel. And again, this will not be very forefront in the painting. And I will probably also, in a minute here, apply some more texture on top of this. Because this is the point in the painting when I really want to highlight and really want to begin to add in texture, and that texture will then give us detail. And I'm trying to be mindful of the direction of the strokes that I'm making, so that your eye can again fill in those gaps. And you can kind of see as I'm going through here, I'm going to turn off the sketch layer now so we don't have that distracting my eye. Oops. And boom. And you can kind of begin to see as I'm doing this that we are having some appearance of little curvature, right? And that curvature there will then imply either differences in terrain or even different individual trees. But again, this is far away still, and this is several miles away, so we still want this to basically not have quite that much detail. But again, as I kind of move the different green colors in different directions, we can begin to have that more the varied slope appearance that I'm looking for. And again, I'm really just trying to be mindful of, now I'm trying to be very mindful of the way in which the terrain should be going. So I'm just generally, again, working it downward and kind of putting dark paint where I feel like there should be dark paint. I'm also going to come back here and I'm going to splotch in some more of that light green color here in the middle to again get that feel of that is where our brightness should be. And that's where I want the orange to run. In fact, I'll even add some more white in here to also again get that feel and that brightness that I'm looking for. And back to the blender brush. And now, again, I'm not focused on creating something that is very accurate or very realistic. I am focused on creating something that has the vertical appeal that I'm looking for. And this element of the painting is probably the only horizontal element. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because I do know that it's going to be covered. And I don't want that very horizontal element to get mixed up or confused with the other more vertical elements that we're adding in a moment here. And again, the beauty of these brushes is the texture. And you can really see it as I move through, that it is adding in these little itty bitty layers of texture and detail into the overall image itself. And I kind of like this shade of green that I'm creating here, so I'm going to try to spread it around a bit. And again, I'm trying to get back to those shorter circular motions as we move through this to really, especially at the top of the tree line there, because I do want there to be that impression of, okay, this is far away, but there are still trees here, and it is kind of still a very vertical element of the forest. Again, trying to pull these up just a little bit. And I don't want the eye to think that there is, I don't want the eye to think that there is a straight line. I want the eye to perceive that kind of varied, the opposite of homogeneous, whatever that word is, appearance of that ridge line. Right? Because that ridge line is really a grouping of trees. At least in this image it is. One of the beautiful parts of the White Mountains, which you'll kind of see in later videos, is the alpine zone, and later paintings for that matter, is the alpine zone. And that alpine zone is above tree line, and that is one of the most unique things in North America, where you can, leave the valley floor at just below 2,000 feet. You can hike for a couple hours, and all of a sudden you're above the trees, and you're above 4,000 feet of elevation, and it is a very beautiful and unique place. It's present in a lot of the mountains of New England, that beautiful alpine zone. And as I'm going through and working this, the illusion of different trees, different colors moving together is really creating that feel that I want, and that blending is how I'm achieving that. And if I were to pick out any one of these colors here that are beginning to appear in this kind of middle area, they're not really on my palette. And that's the beautiful part of it, because they are a mixture of several colors that I've now put together and that I've now kind of joined and combined to create this very mixed feel as I'm going through. And what's adding to that is the beautiful little bits of texture that are going through from the Memaleo brushes, and that more impasto style. And that is something that I definitely like because it adds a little more extra pop to it and adds a little more extra feel to it, so that just changing the direction here so that we get that more darker color mixed in as well. And that little bit of texture that's added on adds a little bit extra for the eye to hitch onto, and adds a little bit of extra tomfoolery that'll trick the eye into thinking there's more than there really is. And that is the wonderful part of painting, of making something that is not really there, taking that flat image and convincing your eye that it's there, and that it is a thing. That is something that is really the end goal of a lot of the artwork that I'm going to try to create. So similar to the last layer, what I'm going to do, I do that all the time, is begin to pull this down. And again, using that same blending brush, I'm just pulling it down. And as I pull this down, I will also unlock the layer below and begin to mix things in some more. And I will let this color, this green color, mix in with the orange background, as well as mix in with the quote-unquote sky color that we blended down on the previous layer, and really begin to work through this. Again, I'm just pulling this down, and I'm trying to pick different points so that it pulls different amounts of paint. And just like on the sky, I am thinking about buttering the bread. I probably am going to use that phrase far too often, but it really is the way that I look at it. As I pull this down, I may also be try to pay attention to the way the terrain is shaped in the rest of the image, which really, as I look at it, isn't much, if any, because the terrain in the image really falls away at the point of the camera. If I'm honest, at this point in the hike, I was pretty gassed, so taking a picture was one way for me to recover some energy. So that's one of the reasons why this is. That's one of the reasons why the ground kind of falls away, because, well, I was tired and I needed a break after that, after a steep incline. So I took a moment to snap a picture and to capture the moment of exhaustion. Not really exhaustion, but capture the moment of fatigue as I move through. So now I am going to be able to turn on that layer now of the sky, quote unquote, and I'm going to begin to let this mix. And again, I'm focusing on vertical strokes because that is what I want, and I'm going to try to hit that edge some. And again, I'm just pulling this down, pulling this down, pulling this down, and pulling it down. And that's really what I want, to capture that vertical essence. And what we're doing here as we blend this is now this base layer has gone from just being orange to being that kind of orangey purple color with the white and the blue mixed in, to now we also have this added dimensionality of this kind of green color. And now that base color underneath has changed completely. So as I go through and blend this, it is getting richer and richer. And that is really what I want. And now we have some whites and blues mixing in here. as well, and that will also add to a very beautiful element as we go through and add more detail on top of this. We get to kind of make that rich color have more and more on top. And that will also add that sense of depth so that the bottom of the painting will have, if it was a real painting, would have way more paint on it. And that would also draw your eye upward because the bottom of the painting would literally be heavy. And that is the what I want. And in the end, too, I kind of also want to have the V shape in the middle there be lighter or seem lighter than the center or than the outsides. And I really want the outsides to feel very heavy. And again, all I'm doing here is just blending. I'm trying to make those circular motions again, and then I'm just pulling down intermittently to really blend this out. I don't intend to edit this video. I intend to let you see this video and to let you see my process in its entirety. And I intend to have this kind of much longer form content. And I really want to show the full painting rather than just being a speed painting or just blocking things in. I really want you to see and feel the time that's being involved, and I want you to see and feel every stroke so that you kind of can get a feel for why I'm doing what I'm doing and the choices that I'm making. And in the end, I think that will help other amateur artists like myself to learn and grow. And hopefully, as a community, we can all do that together and learn a little bit from each other. So that's the other reason why I'll be keeping these videos rather long. So now what I'm trying to do is kind of maintain this light color in the middle again. I don't want to work too much on the mountainside as well, but I do want there to be this kind of very light feel in this center area here, which again will have that much brighter aspect to it as I'm going through. And as I keep working on blending this out so that there is that distinct feel of a mountainside where you're getting where your eye is receiving more light. So it's not necessarily that this side of the mountain is darker or this side of the mountain is darker, but your eye is getting less light from it. So your eye is perceiving it as a darker area, but in reality, it's just blocked from your view. And again, just blending away and trying to create an even feel. And again, I'm trying to use color to really encourage the eye to move in certain directions. And again, we're not going for that one-to-one of the original painting. We're not even trying to make an exact look of trees or the exact look of a mountainside. I am just trying to capture a feel and to capture emotions and to really let this go, to really let this be its own thing, and to let my hand do the talking, even though I haven't shut up for almost an hour now. So I really want this to feel as though, again, it has those kind of vertical elements, and I'm doing that by having brighter colors in certain spots and darker colors in others. And where we choose to have the darker or lighter colors will help your eye to decide where it's going. And again, just moving things around, and just blending. I'm just blending away And we're almost done with this layer now as well. So we've now almost reached the bottom of the painting. And the next layer is where the fun is really going to begin. Because the next layer is where we begin to encounter the midground and the foreground. And that is where a lot of our darker colors that are off screen right now, that are on the more right hand side of my palette, will begin to get used. And I'll begin to really block out the light that we've added so far. And again, I'm just blending away, taking careful care to really preserve and ensure that I have that bright spot in the middle of the painting. Because I know that that'll shine through as we paint on top of it. One last time, pulling paint down. And again, pulling it down. And now we are just blending. And then we are blending. Pulling down. And blending. You can even we've now crossed, or we're about to cross the 1 hour mark, and you can see that we've now created something that is much richer in detail without having to go through and really add too much. So if I scroll back up, we begin to look at this more holistically, you can really begin to see that pop and really begin to see the different shades and different coloring in it, and really kind of begin to understand the elements that are going to go in, because we've kind of already begun to plot out where our foliage is going to go, because we're really going to follow this pattern here, this line that's already on our painting. So I will add on a new layer. I'm going to make this one simpler. It's just going to be called midground. Called midground 1 in case I may add on multiple layers of midground. And I'll go back to our sketch layer. I'm going to lock Wiley and Sky, and I'm going to unlock and have the sketch layer appear. And we'll go back to Midnight Black. And now this mid layer is really kind of working in this kind of direction, right? And that is going to be my initial focus. And what I'm going to try to do, switching back to the midground layer, is I'm going to take something very dark, and a little bit different. So I think I'm going to go with, these are phthalo green, or at least an interpretation of phthalo green. And I'm going to begin with, I think, this color. I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to take this greeny Gerber's brush, and I'm going to keep this rather small. And what I'm going to, well, maybe a little bigger than that. And I'm going to start in this area here, and I'm going to try to have elements like this. And this is the kind of motion that I'm going to try to take, just like that. And again, I'm just using circular motions to put in the shapes of where I think these trees will live. It's okay if I infringe upon my sky some, and I'm just trying to loosely follow that line that we've already established as our general area for this. And I'm basically just going to fill this in, kind of just like this. And I want there to be areas that are light, and I want there to be areas that are dark. I am trying to pay attention to form, but I'm not trying to draw trees. I am just trying to put in patterns that your eye, or in this case even my eye, as I'm going through, will interpret as trees. Again, it's not one-to-one. It's not an exact. I'm not even looking at the reference image right now. I haven't looked at it quite a bit. And I'm just trying to fill in the area that I think need to be light or they need to be dark. And I'm using very almost violent strokes as I do so. As you can see, my strokes have kind of gotten much more frequent and much less defined as I'm going through and adding in this layer of trees. I'm trying to flare it out and have it be much more straight or horizontal as I'm getting lower. And again, I'm just trying to paint this in because as of right now, we don't really have a lot to help define this, right? Because we still don't have detail here. You know, we may have one or two things here that are kind of poking through, and I will add some. And I think that does actually make it kind of look a little more the way we want. So I will think that I'll add some kind of more vertical strokes here. But again, I don't want this to feel like a hillside. I really want it to feel like different trees. And I want you to almost be able to see and feel different trees. And some vertical strokes in the middle here as well, just again to kind of give it a feel of different trees. Maybe lengthen these vertical strokes a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And then mixing it in with, again, some of those more splotchy, violent strokes that we used a minute ago. And we're kind of taking a little more liberty to move lower here as well, because this will need to fill out a much larger part of the painting. And this is going to be how we make this feel much darker. So now that I've done that and applied that, I am going to switch to this more darker sap green and begin to use that to also add in some of these more vertical elements here. To again now add in this additional layer of paint to add in more detail. Again, I'm trying to not use brush strokes that are downward. I'm trying to only use ones that are upward. So if I use downward strokes, it'll begin to move the paint in a different way and begin to remove it. And that's not really what I want. I kind of want it to, well, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. And I'm trying to kind of be specific as to when I'm using either stroke. Because I want to be specific in terms of when I want it to blend or blend away or move paint versus when I wanted to add it. And the beauty of these Memaleo brushes is that they will allow the paint to blend even though you're adding paint. So even though you kind of see it as I'm kind of going through, even though I'm adding paint here, it is still blending and still having a quite interesting appeal to it. I think this is getting to be a little bit further away in appearance than I want it to be, but I think that's okay because I'm liking the way that it looks. And by adding in the multiple colors, now what I'm also doing is letting the eye begin to really think about this in terms of, okay, well now we're looking at a lot of different pine trees, right? And these are now very vertical in the way they appear. So, okay, look at this. This is now something that our eyes can almost begin to interpret as having, we're now beginning to see and kind of maybe invent trees that aren't necessarily there. Now, I'm going to change back to the blender brush, and I'm just going to begin to go over these in that very vertical way. And working it. So now I'm not really using those circular motions, and I am just going through and I'm adding them vertically. If I do remove too much paint, it's easy to fix. I just pull up some more from that darker area and I begin to work through. In a moment here, I may also let the sky blend in a little bit to let that also be turned on, because right now it is locked. For now, I think it's okay for us to have this very vertical element to really paint over it. And you can see that even though it's locked, it is still showing through, and it is still influencing the color that we're seeing. And again, I'm okay with this not being exactly like a tree. I don't want you, as the viewer, to look at this and say, oh, look at that, it's cute little pine trees. I want you to have the feeling of being on a trail. I want you to feel as if these trees are rising up beneath you. And again, I'm just kind of going through and I'm working through, and I'm having this very vertical focused appeal, but I'm also maintaining these lighter areas, and I'm making sure that I am not erasing all the lighter areas. I do want there to be a lot of those, and I want by adding in these lighter areas, we're also having the appearance of gaps in the tree and gaps in the tree line. And that is something that will also help to give the eye a little hint that there's something more there than there really is. And just pulling down some more. And really what I want the eye to do is perceive things and to really begin to now I want you to begin to imagine that and begin to let your eye imagine that there are more things here than there really are. Because again, all we've really done so far is splotch in color. And in that color, we have now added depth to something that didn't have depth in the past. And now we're kind of beginning to see, as it mixes with this even brighter green color, that there is that kind of boundary. And as it's kind of getting there, it's getting harder and harder for the eye to tell which layer is which. In the end, that is what I want. Where I may even go back and amend that tree line with a smaller brush size, or the ridge line I should say, to make it really feel as if it's more blurred, because I think it is standing out a bit too much. But for now, I'm just going to focus on what we're working on here and focus on pulling these up. And really focus on having this kind of vertical element up here and really begin to stretch those forward. Let me kind of scroll up so I can really see the yeah, it's beautiful. So now we've really reached the top of painting. Oops, I had sketch on the entire time. That wasn't supposed to be that way. Turn that off. And this is now really beginning to have that vertical feel that I want it to. As that V shape has become more and more apparent. And there are now more and more layers in this bottom little U, the bottom of the U or the bottom of the V, that are appearing as we blend. And as I begin to kind of have an appreciation for the various different tree lines, if you will, in this midground. And I'm just going to begin to kind of work through those more. And I really want to kind of have them blend from the bottom mark, blend from the bottom. And as I blend from the bottom, pull up from the bottom, more of these distinct lines will appear. And because we had that green base layer beneath this, it's really trying to kind of helping it to pop out. And I'm going to do something kind of similar as we kind of blend through here. I'm also going to add in some more horizontal strokes to blend it like this a little bit to kind of even give it an even more different feel. Because now, as I kind of return to these more different strokes, it's really also adding in a further element of different appeal. And now we're beginning to have a much more forested appeal than what we had a moment ago. And I'm just going to work through this a little bit. Maybe not that much. But again, that's the beauty of happy axes and the beauty of blending is that we can kind of work this back a little bit. So I think I went a little bit too ham, and that's okay. And all I'm going to do is work it back, and now we have this, a nice little differentiation between the two zones, right? And that is something that I kind of want to try to maintain as I'm blending this through. This is also helping me to maintain those bright spots from before. Now I'm going to recover this, I'm kind of going to try to pull it down more and blend more from the darker area and pull some of these darker colors back in with the vertical strokes. And then again, circular motion to kind of ease that back through. And now we're beginning to see some of these kind of elements that we have in our base image where it's kind of jutting out a little bit. And this kind of more jagged nature of individual branches that are beginning to poke through. And we can kind of begin to capture that a little bit by drawing things horizontally out and then blending them through a little bit to give them that kind of horizontal appeal in what's otherwise a very vertical image. And by having these larger segments on top, I'm implying that the ones that are higher up are closer, whereas the ones that are lower here are a bit shorter. Again, because that sky layer is off, as I blend, I'm actually removing paint. And that's something that I would not be able to do on a real physical canvas. Again, I'm kind of going to try to move some of this paint and move this around in such a way that I'm maintaining the background and I'm maintaining the verticality while still giving the appearance of this more vertical nature of the forest, right? And now, even this one layer, I've kind of created multiple different layers that are all kind of working together to create this mid-ground of a thick forest canopy. Down. And mixing in more. to give this kind of appeal to it. And again, just kind of working through and giving us some additional color and really beginning to have this appeal of vertical elements in our forest as I begin to, but again, I'm still kind of maintaining the kind of verticality, even though we're seeing different portions of it have this more horizontal appeal. The texture of the Memileo brushes is also working in our favor here because it allows us to have the added layer of texture to enhance the horizontal nature of the pine branches. I was hoping to do this in one go, but I'm probably going to have to work for another 40 minutes or so with you guys, and then I will take a break and save this, and I'll post a part 2 for us. But this, as I keep going through and keep working through, is really a very good foundation because we have our sky, we have a nice background, we have established where we want our dark colors to be, and we have begun to create distinct layers in the painting itself. Try to lighten up the top of the painting a little bit. Begin to work through and to really begin to stretch things out in terms of this kind of lighter green and let it kind of, and it's lighter both in terms of color and it really almost feels like it is a glaze or or a paint that's been that's been I can't think of the word, that's been reduced in thickness. Sorry, I can't think of the correct terminology. And in the real world, Bob would always say, a wet, a thinner paint, creating the appearance of a thinner paint, and a thin paint will always stick to a heavier paint because the heavier paint is creating that texture. And so what I'm trying to do is to give the appearance of a thinner paint. As I go through, I think on this side I need a little bit more to come out, so I'm going to push some more paint and then pull back some, and then pull it back. And really, again, trying to let the eye believe it wants. And what I'm just doing here is walking up some of that darker paint and thicker paint to be a little bit higher to create that second layer or sub layer within this layer of trees that are slightly closer than others in the image. And blending really does require a lot of patience and a lot of work, because I'm likely going to have to work the same layer a lot to get the appearance that I want, and I'm not really concerned if I make a mistake or if my hand moves. What I really want to just have the appearance of and remove any kind of appearance of are different zones where you can tell the areas that I've worked them and when I worked them. That's the important thing, because that breaks the illusion of the painting. So those are the areas I try to blend away so that you can, so the different levels and different steps that I'm taking appear as if they're one. I'm just working this through. I'm not really concerned about the left-hand side of the painting here, because that's going to have a lot of paint put on top of it, which you can kind of see here. And as we do that, I'm going to begin to use a lot more of the other colors on the palette to really help that stand out, and to begin to use color to define. I'm just going to pull down. And again, pulling down as we have in the past to really begin to capture that feel of the trail below us. Back to those circular motions. And in fact, I'm going to turn back on the Wiley range here, because I now want these colors that are on the bottom to mix in. And now what I'm trying to create is this sub-layer of where we now have the underbrush, basically, where, again, I'm not really trying to add detail of what a specific bush might look like or what a specific plant is or what it's doing. All I'm trying to do is to create a layer or a color change between our upper part of the midground and the higher part of the midground. Again, it's just circular motions and just trying to blend. But again, I do want to focus, and I'll probably bring some of this more light green of the Wiley color into the middle section. So I do feel like it's become a little bit too dark. So I may actually pull this up to, again, add into that vertical appeal. And now, because I'm pulling up, and because we've kind of worked through this color, that is now creating an interpretation in your eyes, mind, that this is something that's in front of the midground we just painted. And what I really want the eye to think is that there is this kind of definitive gap between these two elements. And that gap is where the trail is. So again, I'm just kind of trying to remove this and really trying to make this bright spot come back a little bit. I do feel like it is a bit too dark, but that's okay, because now we have both layers on and they're going to work in unison, and we can make this appear as bright or as dark or as detailed as we want. And so now if I want to have this kind of mixed appearance, I can begin to pull from different areas and begin to pull in different colors to create that illusion of different depths of field. you can now even see that that kind of contrast is much clearer between, I may even kind of go like that a little bit to begin to pull it down some more even. And to really enhance that V shape that we want to be the focus here. So again, just continuing pulling that down and pulling the darker colors away from that center V to really rebuild that V shape that I'm looking for. And now I can just mixing color in. And pulling down. And now because we've mixed colors from the different areas, we now have another color that's not on our palette. And so as I go through and mix this, it's adding in this extra color and that extra little level layer of detail that was not there a minute ago. And that wasn't available to us until we mixed it on the canvas itself. And again, what I'm really trying to focus on is that V in the middle, and I'm really trying to focus on maintaining that shape in some way, and I don't want to let that shape become overly muddied. What I'm doing now is pulling in some more of these horizontal strokes to begin to establish where the bottom of that V is going to be. So I'll pull down some more dark color again. And kind of as you saw again, like I did, I splotched in color for maybe 5% of the time, and the rest of the time I've been sitting here working with what's already on the canvas and working with what I've already put down to make and establish the various different colors and the various different shades and hues that we want to see. Right now, if I do kind of similar strokes on this side, yeah, now we can kind of see that begin to come back and to have that same kind of appeal to it. And again, I want to work this much more down. I'm pulling this down and then maybe up a little bit as well. And as I pull it up, I'm introducing a lot of these lighter colors, which also have a lot more of that darker magenta tone in it. And that is also fundamentally changing the color that we're working with and adding in a little more detail and a little more intrinsity. That's not really a word. And adding in some more little nooks and crannies into the work and some little differences, little islands of color differences to really make it appealing to the eye. And again, I'm not really worried about where things are or what things are shaped like. I'm just smacking paint on the canvas right now. In a moment, I'll probably begin to add on some more detail and I will begin to kind of think about where individual branches but for now, I just want to have this darker appeal. In fact, I'm going to add on back to my greeny grooves, and I'm just going to add on some more color here. And now back to my blending brush, and I'm going to pull straight down through that color I just put on to make it feel more homogeneous to the rest of the painting. I've also just realized that I have not saved this at all, which you can see by the fact that it says not saved here. So I'm having some anxiety, and I'm wanting to get through this so I can say this as fast as possible. Always save your work before you start. Don't be like me. And I'm just trying to scratch in some more of those vertical elements while also pulling. I'll probably pull up some in a moment here to really kind of establish this center as a bright spot at the bottom that kind of enhances the bright spot, or is a reflection or a opposition to the bright spot at the top. But again, a lot more paint is going to be added here, and all I'm trying to do is create basic shapes and forms that make your eye think there's more stuff going on here than there really is. And I'm just kind of working through. Again, I'm not trying to pay attention to form at all. I may be accidentally making this look like more of a flat area than I wanted to, so I'm just going to add on some more of that verticality to it. Pull down. And then work in this kind of motion that is giving us the illusion of tree branches versus what I was doing a moment ago, which was making it look like a flat surface. Which is not really what I'm going for. Again, I'm going to start at the top here this time, and I'm going to begin to work these down and begin to kind of have this kind of curved appeal to it, and like that. Again, pulling elements down in this center area, because that vertical element in the center will reinforce that this is not a flat area, and that we are not dealing with something that is, we're going to walk straight up, we're going to walk very straight or very flat. This is an area where I want there to be that emotion of how high in elevation we are. I say that from very East Coast standards. If you were on the West Coast of the United States, I am probably not even at 4,000 feet at this point, so you can call me a wimp if you like. And again, I'm just drawing away here, and I'm trying to have this appeal of different trees and thicknesses, and trying to have this appeal of a thing that is a forest that is very thick, and a forest that is very old as well. Even though these forests in New England are likely not as old as you might hope they are, or they might appear to be, I still want to have that impression because relative to me or you, they are very old, even though they may only be a couple hundred years old. And so areas like this in the middle here are really why it was important to blend our sky colors all the way down, because that really allowed this to have this much more, this different appearance than the rest of it. I'm going to try to maybe change my strokes directions here a little bit to really kind of bring that back in a little more again, and then contrast that a bit. And these brush strokes are in contrasting directions will again further enhance that vertical nature of the area that we're in. I'm going to add in some more of these circular motions from the bottom here, just to recapture some of that initial color that we had a moment ago. And then back to these kind of horizontal motions in a crisscross way. So there. So now we've been at this for about an hour and a half, and I'll scroll back up so you can see it. I may zoom in a touch as well, and you can really begin to see the work, how it's evolved over the past. And I can even kind of show you where we were by turning the various different layers off. So this is very much, so we started very much with this blank canvas. We sketched in a very basic, very geometric idea of where the different forms and lights should be. And from there, we added on a very generic sky range that also helped to give further definition to where maybe the lighter or darker areas should be. Added on a nice base green layer to help us to further define those forms, and finally began to add our midground. It began to add in definition. I think I'm going to work for a little more and begin to kind of clean up and clear up some of these textures so they're not quite as uniform, and really kind of work to reduce some of these bumps. The texture is good. I want texture, but I don't want texture that shouts the direction in which I was painting. So I'm just going to kind of lightly go through and just work through some of these more violent areas like this and the bottom here. And that'll help us to have something to work on as we move into the foreground. And next time I'll likely start with adding some more detail to the higher branches here, and I'll probably start with a second midground layer where we'll begin to use some other brushes and begin to define actual branches that you can see here working up along that line. But the key here I've created is that, you know, we have a very thick feel of a forest, and we have a very V shape of light in the middle that's going to draw our eye upward. Just kind of working through, again, trying to make some of these brush strokes a bit less obvious. Just trying to work through color, because again, a lot of this is going to get painted over in the final image. So I'm not overly concerned. What I am a little bit concerned about are just areas like this that have a lot of texture on them, because I work them quite violently. And I want to kind of alleviate some of that choice of violence and work it back there, like that. And now, as I scroll up a little bit here, I think I have a much more refined view, where again we have a very heavy bottom of the image and a very light top of the image, to where I may even take, in fact, yeah, I will. I'm going to do that real quick. I basically have turned the sky back on as a layer, and now I'm going to really zoom in on this because I really want to see it. I'm also probably going to reduce the brush size significantly. I'm just going to go through, I'm going to blend this with both these kind of horizontal strokes as well as with circular motion. And what I really want to do is use the highly contrasted color of the sky to add a little more pop to our midground. And I'm also trying to have basically a 30-degree angle on my brush strokes. Neither vertical nor horizontal, 30 degrees, and or 60, because that is going to give the appeal of something that is not necessarily growing straight out. And compared to the very vertical nature of some of the other strokes in the painting, I think it'll feel almost horizontal rather than flat. Again, just drawing that in and then pulling it back some so that we have that area maintained. And now, because I am mixing in the sky, even though I'm painting on the midground, I have to be careful because the sky is available as a layer. So I can actually change that layer even though I'm painting on the one above it. And again, what I'm trying to do is really add depth to the midground. And like things like this, where it's clearly a bit further out in the branches below it, I think are good elements that are helping to kind of give the appearance that there are some branches that are sticking out quite far and reaching for that juicy sunlight. And just keeping pulling out and then pushing back in, pulling out, pushing back in. Sorry, that probably sounds terrible. Pulling the paint out and almost erasing it. And just working the paint along. And now that the sky is turned on, it actively mixes with the green paint, and so even though I'm pushing it back, some of it's still staying there, and that's giving it the illusion of more things happening than are really happening, which again is something that I'm really trying to achieve. Okay, I think I am going to save us there, so I will stop the recording there. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like. I will be posting a part 2, and I will keep going on it. But if you enjoyed this, please give it a like. This is my first video. Every little bit will help. Please subscribe for more if you're interested. I will also be linking my Instagram account to this channel, so if you would like to see my photographs and my other paintings, please feel free to check them out there. And thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. It's been a good hour and 45 minutes, so I hope you enjoyed. If you watched more than 20 minutes, I'm happy.